Morning, everyone. Just talking to my friend Patrick about how I think this is going to be the last interview I do for a little while. So this is like the end of season 1. And stay tuned maybe for the fall for the beginning of season 2. We'll see if people still want to be interviewed and if I still want to do this kind of thing. Who knows? So anyways, I'm here with Patrick, and I met him through a friend on Facebook. And
We actually met. Shout out to Dr. Carson. He referred me to you. That was
it was
the
Carson.
original. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to breathe with him, and he was like, "Hey, man, we could do PDTR forever for your trauma, or you could go see Jamie."
Right.
Yeah, so we had a few sessions there, and then we connected more recently on Facebook.
That's right. Okay. For some reason, I thought you were coming to me, or you came to me through Megan.
Yeah, you would think. I got Dr. Carson from Megan, so basically.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she's such a connector, that one.
Yes.
Every interview I've given, I've been like, shout out to Megan.
Exactly.
Because she's just interwoven into all of these stories, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you could share just whatever comes to mind about how you got here. That seems like such a question.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about your past and your journey, your healing journey.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the big first ordeal was when I was about 10 years old. I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease and acid reflux. And I was like very sick with that for quite a long time, almost 10 years, trying different medications, trying to find the right cocktail. And for those 10 years, I'd say about 2 of them I had like legitimate remission where I was like symptom free and could live a pretty functional life. But besides that, I was just very, very sick and not having the best luck with good doctors or finding good medications for it. And, I realized as such a young patient coming into like the healthcare system, you have like a very limited ability to advocate for yourself. You don't really have the intellectual capacities to just fully grasp all of the things that would be like important and relevant and helpful. So between me being in that position, my parents doing their best, the doctors doing their best, and say pretty, the biases of the Western healthcare system, kind of totally missed a ton of potential opportunities to explore for things that could provide relief and healing. So I would essentially, go through these different medications. They would like work for a little bit, but some of them would have a lot of side effects. So it would be, the balancing point, try to take as little as possible or completely get off of it. But then, it'd be symptoms showing back up again. So I was playing this game, like just wait and try and find out the right cocktail for a very long time. And fortunately, I ended up starting homeschooling a little bit before that. So I was, able to already be in a more ideal situation for, basically being like disabled or dysfunctional for that period. And eventually, like fast forward like 9 years, I was on my like last kind of gastroenterologist, like pre-stem cell transplant, and he was basically like implicitly telling me like he was out of options or out of ideas for me to try. He didn't actually say that, but I had gone through all the approved treatments that he thought would be worth trying. I was already starting to explore more dietary stuff, which for some reason didn't get examined much earlier.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. and eventually started using marijuana. There was like research and anecdotal evidence supporting that. And for some reason, that doctor seemed to be stuck in the point of view that marijuana didn't actually help Crohn's disease, despite like actual research showing that it does, and me being like right in front of him showing that it
Yeah.
does. So it was like not the best therapeutic relationship. So it was kind of a blessing that I reached kind of the end point with that doctor, and I guess I did what I think most anyone else would do in that situation. I like went home and started Googling, like, okay, what are alternative treatments?
Yeah.
Um, and started reading through like forums, reading research papers, just trying to find like anything that seemed like it might be worth trying that might provide some relief.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm about like 19 at this point.
Wow, that's a lot
And
for a 19-year-old.
yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't that. I don't know. I would have if I would have been capable of that. I guess you do what you have to.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
think?
it was just, it wasn't really even a conscious thought. I was just like, this is obviously what I'm gonna do, and yeah, fortunate enough that I'm like well educated enough to be able to sift through that kind of thing and
Right.
make sense of it. So I was doing that for a good 6, 7, 8 months, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and finding like minimal luck for a while. And then it's kind of funny. I ran across someone wrote a blog about his experience receiving a stem cell transplant for Crohn's. And
Mm-hmm.
my first thought was like, wow, that's so extreme. I'm glad I'm never going to have to do anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. um, and then a bit later on, I was like, okay, I'm still not finding anything. Like I need to look into this more. Um, so I read the tiny bit of research that did exist for that, because it was still a trial at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Still is now. And I was able to reach out to this guy Lawrence and connect with him, and he talked with me on the phone for for a few hours, all said and done.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He like answered any question I had, told me like what I needed to do to get in contact with the office, and yeah, like between this potential stem cell transplant, my only other thought that of like something that would be worthwhile trying was going to Mexico or Canada to get like infested with hookworms,
Oh,
because
wow.
that was not legal in the United States. But
Yeah.
there's the hypothesis that our immune systems are out of whack because we are so sanitized in the first world. Um, so yeah, I was like super desperate at this point. Like I was tired of being sick. Like I did not have it in me to just keep living in that
Mm-hmm.
state. So I was very much at the point of like, okay, I want to be like fully healthy or I want to be dead. Like let's just like cut to the chase. So that was you know which one that ended up now, thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, like reaching that place, I was like, it seemed like scary to my parents, like what I was considering, but I'm like, this is
Yeah.
compared to living, and being sick, like this, like telling me I can go through that and then be healthy, like that sounds great to me.
Yep.
um, so I reached out to the doctor's office, and they were at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I'm out in Maryland, so flew out for an evaluation. This would have been, I guess, about 9 years ago now. And my Crohn's was on its best behavior for the colonoscopy and all the testing, and they're like, yes, you have very bad Crohn's. So they accepted me for the trial, time, I thought they were doing autologous stem cell transplants, which meant that you would be receiving your own stem cells. They would do a little trick to make your body produce them and harvest them out and give them back to you.
Yep.
And when I was there for my evaluation, Dr. Burt, the head immunologist running everything, was saying we're actually going in a slightly different direction, and we want to use umbilical cord stem cells.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, I totally, trust whatever he thought was going to provide like longest lasting remission, because they were noticing with patients getting their own stem cells, by about 5 years, 80% of people were relapsing.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so they would still have kind of a fresh immune system, and the disease would be milder, more responsive to treatment. So from a quality of life point of view, it was still like a godsend for so many people. But
right.
yeah, they had the hypothesis that if you got stem cells that came from an immune system that didn't already have, Crohn's with it, that would increase the odds of like longer term remission. So yeah, I was healthy enough otherwise to be fit for the trial, because it's about a week of chemotherapy to wipe out the immune system, basically reset everything so the immune system isn't attacking itself anymore, and then infusing the stem cells to help heal the inflammation and whatever other damage has been left and rebuild the immune system. So after the evaluation in March, super fortunately, they had an insurance team to fight that battle. So I just had to wait for about 10 weeks while they tried to convince my insurance company that, yeah, you should cover this. And yeah, about 10 weeks later, I get a phone call from my insurance company saying like, yes, this will get approved. And I immediately like just start crying, because I'm like, yeah, my parents aren't gonna have to like sell the house and all this other stuff to make this happen. And I'm like, wow, this is like actually going to happen. This is like incredible. I'm like, I could actually get out of this. And at that point, they started looking for matching cord blood donors in the registry. And I very fortunately had 3 matches when I only needed 2, because the volume of blood, the cord is not super large, so they were going with 2. And there were some people who were unable to get a transplant because they couldn't find a matching donor. So I was very, very fortunate. And then fast forward to the summer, and I go out for pre-testing to make sure I'm still like healthy enough to tolerate the chemotherapy, and that all goes pretty well. And I get cleared, and then late August 2011, go into the hospital. It takes about 3 weeks, start to finish, getting the chemotherapy regimen up front to wipe out the immune system, reset things, and then infusing the stem cells. And then at that point, it's just kind of hanging out and waiting for the immune system to come back online.
Were you waiting in the hospital, or you could
yeah.
go?
No, I was in isolation during that point.
Oh, wow.
So, like,
all right.
my mom could still visit. Yeah, but like that was the riskiest part of the transplant, is like getting sick while you have no immune system. So yeah, they keep you nice and locked down. And yeah, that was like the best medical care I've ever gotten by far in a hospital. Like best quality nurses, and like just incredibly attentive. And so like, it was rough, but compared to already, 9-10 years of being sick with Crohn's, I'm like, this is fine. Like it felt like this is for a reason. I'm gonna get healthy. Like, you can do whatever you need. Like way worse would have been fine with me. And yeah, I get to like 2 weeks after they infuse the stem cells, and my white blood cell count shows up on blood tests. That's pretty much all they were waiting for. Then they're like, all right, you're good to go. We can send you home now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then I fly home, and they're still closely monitoring things from a distance. So I'm getting blood work like weekly and then bi-weekly for a while. They're trying to they have me on some immunosuppressants to try to play the balancing act of getting the stem cells to play nice with my body, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were actually hoping to get some chimerism with the immune systems, that I would inherit some of the donor immune system along with my immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't end up actually happening. And they weren't sure exactly how to create that, but it had happened with the patient before me. I was like the second patient to get this, so we're still, just, taking the best shot we can. But yeah, for about 6 months afterwards, I was just like taking it very easy. Like, I still remember getting out of the hospital and driving for the first time. And the day after, I was driving, my calf was sore from using the pedals. Like, that was just like
That's how exhausted you were.
yeah, how exhausted, how worn down, how like atrophied everything got from just
Wow.
having to like rest so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did get sick pretty frequently early on with such a kind of fresh immune system, like colds, sinus infection, some gut bugs. But yeah, other than that, things were all going well. And by about 6 months afterwards, I like stopped getting sick so much, and pretty much all of my symptoms had cleared up. I was like, okay, like I'm pretty sure.
Yay.
Yeah, like this is actually like amazing. And yeah, by this point, I'm like feeling better. So I'm like, okay, I can like actually like go back to or start living life again, because I had about a year of remission, what would have been my like first year of college. So I had a little bit of experience of normalcy in that sense. But yeah, I was just like, yeah, I was just super excited. Like, wow, I get to like live a life again. This is amazing. Like for the first year or two after the transplant, like basically nothing bothered me, because I had just come from, having absolutely no life and no capacity to do anything really, and being in pain and suffering all this time, to like, all right, I'm just fine. I don't have to like be concerned with so many things now. So yeah, I started back to community college, and then was getting ready to transfer to University of Maryland. And yeah, still didn't really know what I wanted to study exactly. Before all this stuff, I was on the engineering track. And I kind of stuck with that for a little bit, but then I ultimately realized like this stuff doesn't come that easily to me. Like, I don't want to spend all of my time in the library like studying, trying to like figure this stuff out fast. So when I was transferring to Maryland, I actually like chose my major just based on process of elimination. Like, I literally looked through the entire list, and like basically everything was a no except for community health. So I actually, yeah. So I did end up sticking with that. Then got to Maryland, and yeah, got about I think a year into that, and was like, wow, I'm like, just still over the moon. I get to live like a normal life and be a dumb college kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had that kind of sense of normalcy until about like summer 2013, fall 2013 or so. And then I started to like be experiencing a lot more anxiety. It was like kind of slowly creeping up, but like things were setting in. And some of it was about like family issues with my parents. And you know, in that sense, that was a very new experience for me. So I ended up like seeing a therapist for some of that, and it was not particularly helpful. It was nice to have someone to talk to in some
Yeah.
sense, but
I hear that.
yeah.
It can be really great sometimes, and other times, especially, I don't know, were you pretty aware of how you were feeling and the reasons for it?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, you were not? Oh, okay.
No, not until basically like my awakening started.
Mm,
I was super shut down. I didn't have like a ton of emotional literacy skills. I didn't learn a lot of that from my parents. I didn't have like another consistent person or source of that in my life.
oh,
And as a coping strategy for being so sick, I got really good at dissociation and so
mm,
just like get out of my body, like just forget all of this stuff. Like let's just, exist in past time and hope I can get healthy enough. So yeah, I had absolutely like no sense of that stuff for myself really.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Nobody was modeling it for you, so
Right.
it's pretty rare, honestly,
Yeah,
in today's
absolutely.
world. It's just really rare for someone to be present with themselves and able to communicate about how they're feeling and feel the feelings too.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get one part of that, a lot of times. Yeah. Okay. So you started talk therapy, did that for a while. Did that impact your symptoms at all? Did you have a flare up or anything that came out of that?
No, so still to this day, as far as like actual Crohn's symptoms, nothing has ever creeped up again. I have not been on any medication for it since the stem
Mm.
cell transplant and no symptoms. So,
Do you consider it to be cured?
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, right. My doctor wouldn't explicitly say that, but he did say like he doesn't expect me to ever have to deal with it again.
Amazing.
Yeah, and
Must have been like the most beautiful thing to hear in ever.
yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I was kind of already there, but
yeah.
to hear like him say that, then I know how conservative he was and his word choice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that touches on another interesting element that I learned like much later that I didn't realize was probably at play during my stem cell transplant, which is definitely um, outside of the scope of what they were actually studying.
Mm.
But once I started learning more about like the placebo effects and the power of the mind and our consciousness to influence health or sickness, um, I recognized that my mindset of like almost desperation really helped me because I was
Hmm.
in some sense like this like get me out of here. I want to be dead or I want to be totally healthy. There
Hmm.
was really no in between for me. So in my mind, once I was on this track of pursuing the stem cell transplant, I was like, okay, this can do it. And so basically all of my energy was going into like expecting this life to come to me.
Yeah.
Um,
That's amazing.
yeah. And I talked with some other patients who didn't have quite as good luck with their stem cell transplant. And I could tell they still had they hadn't had that kind of shift in mindset really, and I can totally understand it when you get beaten down for so long by so many things, and you have this all of this going on, it can be really hard to break out of that and to be able to receive like this kind of like huge healing experience and just totally, transcend everything and get into a different
Yeah.
life.
I mean, essentially, I would call it a miracle.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I should not be healthy right now as far as like Western medicine would be concerned.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe, most people don't, people don't usually die from Crohn's, but yeah, to be this healthy is ridiculous. Um,
But not
so
everyone is open to receiving a miracle or thinking it can happen to them. That's the thing.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like, I don't know exactly, like I joke about it that it was some good old fashioned like American entitlement and greed of like, no, this is bullshit. I want to speak to the manager. I want a better life.
Yeah.
This will not do, like sending the food back from the restaurant. So like whatever that was like, no, this is, I'm not living like this. I think that was a huge doorway that like,
Mm.
if people knew the power of just saying no to the life that they're living, or what they're told they have to experience, like could really find some amazing opportunities there.
Yeah. I call that like the healing choice, and people will make that. Um, Once you make it once, it's easy to make it multiple times, but you have to. It's sort of like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. Like you don't know what um, is going to happen, but you're here for it. and
Mm-hmm.
and I know this is a risk, but I am totally open. I'm ready. I'm done with the old, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to move into the new. So that
Yeah.
that I'm done with the old, like I cannot live this way anymore, and I'm ready for what's next is powerful, like
Mm-hmm.
spiritually very powerful, and calls in all this assistance from the universe to help with healing. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. I love that you were, I mean, I don't love that you had to get to that place, but
Right.
I love that you experienced a very tangible miracle.
Yeah. It's weird to be grateful that I did suffer so much, but that was a large part, I think, of why I got to that point where I could open up, because I was just so done.
Where in this process did your awakening begin, or was it gradual and who knows?
Um, that if we hop ahead back to
Okay.
like the talk therapy stuff, that's a little bit after that. Um, so yeah, I'm in talk therapy trying to sort this out. And I remember that semester in school, like I started having a lot harder time doing work. My grades were suffering more. Um, and this is the semester right before I'm about to actually go study abroad in Sweden, because I was like, I'm absolutely gonna like take this opportunity to go do that now that I have the health and the means to do it. So, and a little like bookmark, this is also around the time when I found dance.
Mm.
Um, so we will come back to that.
Mhm.
But um, I went to study abroad. And at first, like everything's great. I'm in a totally new place. Like I'm away from what I now realize were so many of the things that were causing that anxiety. And uh, just like as a country, it felt like Sweden was more at my pace. Like, wow, like, people actually are slower here. Like, not everyone's running around frantic. It's just great. Um, and that lasted for a bit. But then I still, like, things just came back, like this anxiety, like had a lot more trouble like connecting socially. And I went there in January, so I think around March, late March or early April. I I got a text from my mom that we need to talk, we need to Skype, and then she breaks the news to me that my dad had to go to the hospital because he was like basically paralyzed. Something happened to his spine. And like fast forward a little bit, and they finally figured out he had kidney cancer, and it had metastasized already, and one of the tumors was damaging the spine, so it was already like very late into it. So that was just like a whole nother like, wow, okay, I'm like in another country, like away from my family, getting this news. In some sense, it didn't matter a lot anyway, because there's nothing I really could have done. And like my relationship with my relationships with my parents, and my capacities for like meaningful communication at that time were extremely limited anyway. So I ended up, my parents wanted me to just stick out the semester there and then come back afterwards, because it wasn't like that urgent that I needed to rush back. So I, was in it was just a really not super great feeling space, but finished it out, and then came back home, and was able to visit my dad, and was like in a weird state of like kind of trying to like come back to putting together my life as I'm coming home after being abroad, and also spending time with my dad, and all of that, and like that like never felt good. I felt just like trapped, like I didn't know what to say or anything, and my dad was like a very quiet person, so most of the time we would just like have minimal conversation, just be hanging out, but like never really felt like I did the speaking your piece and all that sort of thing, while he was still in his body there. So it was just an extremely unpleasant experience, on many levels. And it was September 2014, so it was about 6 months from when he was diagnosed to when he passed, because he reached a point where he was like, I don't want to do radiation anymore. He's like, just make me comfortable, like this is kind of pointless. And still up until this point, it was this kind of like gradual increasing like tension and anxiety and distress. And after he passed, I still remember getting home, and I remember turning on music. I still remember the song I turned on, and then it just everything totally shattered. There was like kind of like before and after this in my life.
What was the song? Like I want the whole scene.
It was Ember by Stumbleine, I think. A very it's like an instrumental, dreamy kind of melodic sort of thing. Like it was very fitting, of course. Yeah, and just like crying, and then like after this point, it basically felt like everything just shattered, like spiritually, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, just like overwhelmed from everything kind of catching up to me. But I didn't realize at the time, but later on, just like, I guess this would be like 24-ish years of, not dealing with emotions at all. The trauma, being sick, like so severely sick for so long, on top of that, and everything else just, and just like everything else kind of coming to a head, being like, nope, this is when it's happening. Yeah, by this point, I started going back to seeing the same talk therapist again, and again, like very minimally helpful. Like she tried to like help me through the grief, and like the communication wasn't effective. It wasn't really tangibly helping. So yeah, can call it call it depression at this point. Like started smoking a lot of pot. Just like I don't know. I'd get myself to go social dancing at this point, but that would be sometimes I wouldn't, but that was another huge source of any sort of stability or any sort of anything that made any sort of sense. And yeah, I ended up withdrawing from school that semester because I was just like, I can't function. This isn't gonna work.
You're
Um,
coping.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like fast forward a bit. I'm just kind of in this state working through things, trying to make sense of it with my therapist, and not a lot of progress really. And it's understandable for, you know, they say things can take months or whatever, even for someone who is more emotionally literate.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this lens of like, okay, there's the grief from that, and then there's also the stuff that was happening before. And so dealing with the mental healthcare system and their points of view with the DSM and all that stuff, we we're looking through this lens of like, okay, like we're kind of outlining this problem, we're calling it a problem, and even if someone doesn't say like you have this mental illness or whatever, still as a client, like when you're in that sphere of things, it can be pretty easy to take that on and pathologize yourself and buy into it.
Label it, take it on as an identity.
Exactly. And have it create more self-fulfilling issues.
Right.
So at this point I'm like, okay, like this isn't adding up. Like even if I did have this thing that was a problem, this map of the DSM that you are selling me, like there is no way out of this maze. Like what is the deal? What are you not telling me? Like, do you just not know? Like I didn't understand it, but something just felt off, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
So I again went back into research mode and started searching around online and reading whatever I could, trying to make more sense of it. And my therapist for a while basically became like my homework checker, and I would be like, I explored all this stuff, and she'd be like, yeah, this is, you're like on the right track, like piecing things together or whatever. And still somehow, this is a process of probably 4, 5, 6 months or so. And I still, despite explicitly digging, hadn't run across complex trauma yet in any of the literature until trying to remember what the actual root of finding this was, but I found a book called Running on Empty about like childhood emotional neglect. And I looked at the author's little questionnaire for like 23 questions or something, and I like highly, highly related to the 22 of them. I'm like, oh, okay,
yep,
that makes some sense. This might be what I need to look into.
Yeah.
So yeah, I read that book, and it didn't have a whole lot in terms of like solutions, but it started making sense. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm like making some progress. Like I can like go to my therapist and try to make some more sense, get some help from her, get some more information from her about it. And then I go into my session with her, tell her like, hey, I've like figured out a huge piece, I think, like, childhood trauma, childhood emotional neglect, all this stuff. And that triggered her.
Oh no.
Yeah,
it
was such a like gross feeling, like the moment that it came into the room. I still remember like the energy of it, like just like totally whipped.
Yep. Okay.
And yeah, right. And so I later realized like, oh, she hadn't done her work, so there was no way for her to go there with me. And so
Yeah.
instead of being able to facilitate that for me, it turned into trying to redirect it and steer it away and kind of like very subtly try to deny and
Block.
minimize, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and block it. And so like I'm, you know, in total fight or flight as soon as that happens for the rest of the session. Never went back to her again. Like this is ridiculous. Like I, this is
No.
the person who's supposed to like be there to help. And yeah, that was extremely traumatizing. And I'm very fortunate that I had already been through so much with the healthcare system, and they had lost so much credibility in my mind.
you you had already been
So
disappointed so many times.
exactly,
You were used to it.
yeah, exactly.
Sucks.
Yeah, it does,
Ah,
but it saved me from buying into what she was saying and staying
yep.
stuck and trapped. Um,
Yep.
and I was extremely fortunate. I had like my best friend at the time, like basically I only had one friend throughout most of this process that I
Mm,
could talk to, and she had a background in psychology and
mm.
eventually became a therapist, and she saw my side of it, and she could provide like a little bit of extra validation. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going crazy, but no, it's just this is crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
yeah, so there was that whole thing, and I'm like, okay, great. I guess I'm not going to therapy again for a long time.
Yeah.
I will go back to working on all this myself, and uh, yeah. By this point, since I had withdrawn from school and my attempt to return the following semester was unsuccessful, I had moved back home with my mom, and so it created um, this really uncomfortable experience of, oh no, I am discovering the roots of this in childhood trauma and emotional neglect, and I am at my
Oh
childhood
man.
house, and my mom is here, and so that was kind of the thing that pushed it all to a head. Was like,
Yeah.
I can't feel comfortable or calm having a very normal conversation about like what's for dinner with my mom. I can't even be in that house and like
Yeah.
feel comfortable.
Right.
And so there was about like a 2 week period of the most ridiculous dissonance in my mind of like, do we accept the truth? Do we cling to the old? No, things were okay. It wasn't that bad. And it was back and forth for a while, and it was just like, it was crazy making.
Mm,
But
mm,
you know, the the truth will prevail, and
mhm.
eventually I did get over the edge with it, and was like, no, I have to, I have to fully accept this, and shit, I have to get out of here. I cannot heal. I cannot make the progress I need to while I'm in this space where I am constantly triggered. I like
Mhm.
nothing ever could have happened. Like my mind was not in a position to do anything. So
Mm.
um, yeah, I ended up leaving home and going no contact with my mom because I didn't know what all I needed to do. I just knew I needed to get out, and then I'd be able to make more sense of it, and eventually be able to reconnect. So I was like, sort of homeless for the following month, like bouncing around friends' houses while I figured out like where I was going to stay, what I was going to do, and ended up staying for a month with my god family,
Mm.
and then eventually ended up moving back into my same college house that I was in before room
Mm.
opened up, and I at this point was intending to go back to school. So I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, and then I will like since I had withdrawn from school, they basically wanted me to take time off to get myself where I needed to be so I'd be successful when I came back. So that all kind of aligned, and I wasn't necessarily in any better of a place when I went back, and I didn't really want to go back, but I was doing all of this on an extremely tight budget,
Mm.
and so like I wasn't functional enough to get a job really.
Yeah.
But I could re-enroll in school and take out student loans and be able to survive. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was the next chapter was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be like reading about complex trauma and all this stuff. So, I read Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving, the Pete Walker book. Body Keeps the Score, so many other online resources. I'm just like, it's super slow progress because trying to read it while you're in it is,
Yeah, it's really hard.
yeah, it's triggering as you go through it. So your
Yeah.
mind is already like, nope, 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 nope.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the next, that therapy session that, blew things up is probably like, I don't know, May or June or something. And then, yeah, eventually, it was through Body Keeps the Score and hearing about internal family systems therapy. I was starting to explore that. I got the book to read more of what that was about. I was like, okay, I can actually I like this. I could see myself trying this with a therapist. And found a local therapist who was trained in it, talked to her on the phone, and immediately I was like, okay, this woman, she sees, she's the one. So of course she didn't take insurance, so
No, of course not. Yeah.
right, because she was good. And yeah, that was I guess in, I don't know, February or something maybe, the following year. And that experience, I finally started to be like, oh, these are emotions. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I realized nothing more had opened up. Like I was, kind of scoping out the territory with all of my research beforehand, but I still needed something more tangible, more emotional work, more direct, someone to actually be able to guide me into it, because
Gotcha.
I didn't have any of the resources on my own. So yeah, I worked with her for a bit and finally was making progress. Like, okay, things can move, things can be healed. I can this can work out. Okay, great. Yeah, this timeline is so blurry thinking back to it now, because it's just and overall just such a crazy experience to have, this shattering, and
Mm-hmm.
everything is this kind of, it's the Jenga tower falling
Mm-hmm.
apart of everything. So yeah, I was working with her for a while and making some progress, then ran out of money, and was, still this whole time trying to figure out everything I could for myself, while getting through school as best I could, so I could keep progressing and be able to get scholarship money and loans, and just afford to be able to live. And yeah, eventually I had a moment where I was like, okay, the problem is not me. I am not the crazy one. It's literally everything else in the world. Everything is crazy. And I was just like, what is going on here? And fortunately, I chose the path of community health, so I had this lens of looking at the world more now. And so I was like, oh, there's some mass psychic illness or psychic epidemic going on or something. So I Googled that and ended up finding who would become my first main spiritual teacher, a guy named Paul Levy, who wrote a book called Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. Do you know it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. And up until this point, I felt like I was, still kind of in normalish territory. I before this I was, pretty scientifically minded, atheist, like whatever, not into any sort of spiritual stuff or out there stuff up until this point. But yeah, reading this book again, which was like so traumatizing for me to read, which was like peeling my eyes back so much. I'm like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
oh god, oh what the hell? How did we end up here? You know, just pulling back the veil and seeing so much that I was already becoming sensitive to. It was just so overwhelming. I couldn't make any internal sense of it. But I'm like, oh, the things that are off about the world. This is it. This is like describing more the root levels of it. And yeah, I mean, it was such a rough period. Like like using a lot of pot. Like sometimes it was off and on. Sometimes it was really on. And I like the only times I would be sober was to go social dancing in a week. Just like could not deal with my internal experience. I was suicidal for a long time. Just like so much distress. And I didn't even finish that book, and already had reached out to get a Skype session with Paul, and it was incredible. The first instant the call connects, I just feel seen. I feel space. I feel like, whoa, how can this guy who knows nothing about me already like create this space like instantaneously for me to connect to? Like if it were not for Paul and the sessions and his writing, I very well might not have made it through this awakening. I very well might have gone off the path. So yeah, started working with him a bit, and it was great because he just was basically my friend. He just talked to me like anyone else. He's not coming in as this wise guru, even though he is. And it was just such a great experience that I knew, okay, I have this in my corner as I continue the trip through hell and trying to heal all of this stuff and make sense of all these rabbit holes about the world that we're now opening up to me, of like the darkness, the evil, the trauma, the corruption of the world, just so many like ugly topics that I was forced
confronted with and confronting.
So again, still continuing to try to do this work and keep getting through school, and maybe I'd have some money for some therapy sessions or a session with Paul, but most of the time not. And then eventually I had met someone in the dance community who did like sound healing, energy healing, Reiki, like stuff in that ballpark. And I had reached a point where even with the internal family systems therapy, I was like, this is too slow. Like we got to speed this up. Let's go deeper. So I was getting more curious. Like I had only read a little bit about this stuff before and didn't know what to make of it or anything. But she was a friend from the dance community, and we, one of these connections that was meant to happen at the time. She I got a session with her, and she did some access bars and facilitated stuff alongside that, and it felt like 10 years of therapy in one session. It was ridiculous. I felt so light and so clear afterwards. I was like, okay, this is amazing. Thank you.
Awesome.
And continued working with her, and I owe a lot to her. Shout out Stephanie. She like really helped me feel better equipped and have more tools to deal with my own internal healing process. in a much more concrete and tangible way. So like, after not too many sessions with her, she was like, why are you seeing me anymore? You have everything you need. Like, you got all of this. Which is it's great to have a healer who will take that stance with you and really put the, connect
Set
you
you
with,
off like a mother, like letting the child leave the nest. Go do this. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I'd like very occasionally still get another session with her when I was just feeling like super stuck or whatever. But yeah, she also at this session told me to check out Five Rhythms, which
Neat.
I had not heard of at this point. Like, I had started partner dancing a couple of years ago. Started with some ballroom and West Coast swing, and then started Brazilian Zouk eventually. But the partner dance world, especially West Coast swing, which was my main community, it's not the most like spiritually or consciously driven dance. So I go to my first Five Rhythms class, and basically you're just like turning your brain off and flailing your body to music for 2 hours. And at the end of it, when we sat down, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been after with meditating. Go figure, and get it through the opposite of sitting still.
Right. Through the feminine.
Right. Yeah. And so, that Five Rhythms and dance became one of my like primary ways of healing moving forward. And it was this great experience because I also was doing a lot of partner dancing, and so it gave me so much more depth to bring into my partner dancing. It like so much more started opening up, and I would learn so much from going to these dances and being in a space with community, moving my body to music, to rhythm, and to be in Buddhism they talk about the importance of community when you're on this awakening path or in general, and to have a conscious community of people who are coming together who also were like-minded to do this work and really opening up and really getting it. There was like so little ego involved, and it could feel so much safer. And it was so instrumental in starting to connect more with myself and with other individuals, and just with a sense of community, because it's such an alienating experience being on the planet anyway, and then having this total shattering of everything and being like, wow, I literally have no words. I don't know what to say to communicate to anyone, to connect, even if I felt comfortable or safe enough to. And trauma is already known for its ability to basically rob us of words to describe it. So to find this modality where words don't matter, it's movement, and like it. I was like resistant to it at first, but you can connect so much just moving your body with another human. Like you would tell the story of like, oh, we haven't had a real conversation. The connection can't be that deep or that meaningful, but like actually it might be like deeper because you dance with someone.
Right.
Like you get so much more to the core and the essence through that. So I would started going to a lot of these Five Rhythms dances and doing the workshops whenever I could, that would be like multi-day, going really deep and just having such deep experiences of grieving in community. It was just so healing. Like I learned to essentially take this practice and be able to do it by myself at home. Just like, oh, I can flip on music and I can guide my mind, guide my consciousness into a state, into a stance where Gabrielle Roth, the creator of Five Rhythms, says the movement is the medicine. If you just put the body in motion, the psyche will heal itself. So it was just like a numbers game to me at that point. I'm like, okay, feeling weird or confused or uncertain, all right, I'm gonna get myself to dance, hopefully. You know, wouldn't always work out, but having that, yeah, it changed so much.
I actually have to go.
Oh yeah.
I want to hear the rest of the story though. It's like
Yeah,
the movie's not over.
right. Well, the finale's got to be multi-part, right?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. I do want to hear the rest. So let me PM you and we can coordinate a time to just complete the conversation because otherwise
Yeah,
this is the
yeah.
worst.
Yeah, sure. No, I was like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to cover everything in an hour. It's like pretty
Yeah, nope.
interesting.
Turns out no. um
Cool.
okay, let me stop the recording. Bye everyone.